me just check.
Welcome, everyone. This is Leslie Warner from Tufts Alumni Career Services. We're just double checking some technical issues before we get started to make sure everyone has gotten the link that works for them.
Okay, so I just sent out an updated link to everyone who registered. And
You let me know, Nicole, when I should get
mhm,
started with the
okay,
introducing things.
okay. So why don't we just wait about 30 seconds more, and then I'd say you can start, Leslie.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And I'm going to turn my volume off. I'm going to mute.
So welcome all. As I said a moment ago, I'm Leslie Warner. I'm Assistant Director of Tufts Alumni Career Services. And welcome to today's webinar, which is called In Times of Uncertainty, Tapping Mindfulness, Positive Psychology, and Neuroscience to Manage Your Stress. We have three main goals in Tufts Alumni Career Services. Those of you that have come to these programs before have already heard this, but we just want to let people know we present programs like this, including webinars and, once we can again, in-person networking events. And we invite all alumni, all schools. And we've increased our offerings to help you during this time, again, with webinars. We're going to continue to add new programs throughout the summer, so check our website for new program schedules and archived recordings of earlier webinars. Coming up next is the gig economy on June 3rd and LinkedIn on June 10th, where we'll have today's speaker, Sabrina Woods, coming back to give us insights into best practices with networking on LinkedIn, both in general and in our present time. Our second goal in Tufts Alumni Career Services is to foster networking and connections between alumni and between alumni and students. And now there's a new online resource. It's been alumni to student networking for a year or so, but now a new platform is launched within it called The Herd, which is alumni to alumni networking. Art sciences and engineering and SMFA grads, you can look for the email invite that you probably received yesterday. If you don't see an email invite, you can go directly to our website, click on The Herd, and join. You can connect with alumni for networking, and you can also share your career experience with students. We're really excited about this new platform. And the third thing that we do is provide individual alumni career coaching services for graduates of art sciences and engineering and SMFA. Now, for today's webinar, we're going to be presenting from now until about 2:15 with questions answered during the webinar and also at the end. Any questions that you have, you can type into the chat option. And you can see that if you move your cursor around on the screen, it's usually at the bottom, although there may be some devices where it's at the top. And you see this thing that looks like a bubble. You click on it and then you can type in chat. And I encourage you to make sure your chat is going to everyone. Although if you, I think all of the chat goes to everyone. Okay, good. You'll also see a Q&A option. We're encouraging people to use the chat option just so we can have one space to monitor, and we're also going to be looking at the chat box in case you have a technical issue, an access issue. My associate in our department, Nicole Anderson, is also with us. She'll be mostly in the background, working on the technical aspects and supporting us in this presentation and helping make sure that you all can get connected. So let's get started and get our presenter on the screen. Our first speaker today is, our only speaker today is Sabrina Woods. She's a career coach I've known for over 15 years. And I first met Sabrina when we were both members of a local organization for career counselors called Career Counselors Consortium. And we've been friends and colleagues ever since. I've seen her career as she's moved through working through several colleges, including Northeastern University, Harvard, and also built her private practice where she's supporting people in navigating career change, job search challenges, using her own, always holistic and very human-centered style. Um, we also were members of a smaller group of career coaches who met regularly to share resources and support each other's work. I've attended some of her trainings before. We are in for a treat. She has a lot of great information to share, and I know you'll enjoy her engaging training style. So welcome, Sabrina.
Leslie and Nicole, thank you so much for having me. I really feel honored to get a chance to present to alumni of your university and just have an opportunity to share some of the things that I've learned over the years in the space of building resilience and being stronger, whether that's in the office or in the job search. So let me start by saying that there's some additional resources on my website, sabrina-woods.com. And you will also get a handout. I think we're going to send this to you after. I can double check with Nicole and Leslie.
Yep.
We'll be sending you this 4-page handout, but you can also find it on my website, and I can show you where. Actually, let me do a quick switch over, and I'll show you that real quick. Just a little bit easier to see. I'm a visual learner too. So you'll find a mindfulness section on my website, sabrina-woods.com, and then you'll see job search during challenging times, plus a handout called Rising Above Your Stress, and some PowerPoint slides. I presented a few weeks ago at something called the Hope Summit, which was a free job search platform event, multi-day event for job seekers, and I created or added these into my website so people could access them. So feel free, those are tied to this talk today. All right, let me jump back in here. And I like to start experientially. Why not have an experience of mindfulness, since that's part of our topic today? So my invitation to you is going to be to join me in taking 3 deep breaths, where we actually inhale for a 4 count and hold for a count of 4 and then exhale. So let's just give this a shot. It's really simple, but it's really nice to do, and it's really good for our brains. So what I'm doing right now is I'm uncrossing my legs and planting both feet firmly on the ground. And I'm actually taking notice of my toes, balls of my foot, and my heels, so that I can actually be a little bit more in my body than where we spend most of our time up here. The next thing I'm doing is I'm noticing where my hamstrings and my glutes are touching the chair, taking note of my lower back and where it's hitting the chair. So we're just feeling our bodies, just kind of moving into them. The other thing I'm doing is opening my chest up a bit, allowing for me to be able to take some deep breaths. And actually what I'll do, what I should have done here is stop sharing for a second so you can see me as we do this. So having our posture upright, but not tense. You can go like this and then let it down. That is a really good way to do this. All right. So in this posture with a little more noticing of our body, we'll now take a long, deep inhale. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a slow exhale. Another inhale. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Last deep inhale. Hold, 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Now take a few more breaths at any pace. Just sort of settling in. Noticing the breath on the inhale and the exhale. Your mind will wander, and just Gently bring it back to the breath. Take 2 more gentle breaths with me. Thanks for joining me on that. This is a tool that I use throughout my day. I feel if my anxiety or my stress starts to rise, maybe I'm at an 8. If I take a few deep breaths, I can feel it come down a notch. Maybe I get to a 7, or maybe even lower. So some people think, oh, to get the benefits of mindfulness, I have to sit down for a half hour and meditate on a cushion. Actually, even a few deep breaths like this send the message to the brain that I'm safe. We're breathing deeply. Again, it's sending that message to our nervous system and our brain that we're okay. So it's good to do. All right, let me go back into our PowerPoint and tell you what I have in store for us. The topic today, there's a couple topics related to our session today, but stress is one of the main features. And then mindfulness-based tools. Positive psychology, I guess puppies have nothing to do with positive psychology, but it just made me smile, especially this little guy in the top left with the polka dots. Just some visuals to give you a smile. And then the other topic is neuroscience, the brain and the nervous system. What I wanted to kind of start with is ask ourselves, well, what is stress like in America? I've got some statistics that are from like 5 years back. Stress has a negative impact on my personal and professional life. What percentage do you think of people actually said this in 2014? Did we decide we'd pop up a poll, or we're just gonna do it in chat?
I think you should try a poll.
Okay. So Nicole will have you pop up the poll, and you'll have an opportunity to participate and say, what percentage of people said that stress has a negative impact on my personal and my professional life, both, a couple years back.
Yep, I'm just trying to pull it up now. And of course,
Hey.
technology doesn't like me right now. So my stress is at, what did you say, an 8 or a 9?
So take a breath. We can have extra breaths in this presentation. Sometimes we get on a webinar and they just scream through content and you just almost got inundated. And my goal for us is to actually have a little slower pace for this one.
Oh, there's the poll.
Yeah, so now you have an opportunity to weigh in.
So we're guessing how many people said this in 2014, right?
Yes, exactly. So if this statistic was for right now, it would be a very different number, as part of my point. I don't have that statistic for right now. But even looking at polls from the past gives us, or some statistics from the past gives us an idea of how our culture is in this country, especially related to our stress. Yeah. So we give you guys another minute. Add in. All right. So we're seeing B, 29% as our most popular number. So again, a couple years back, the number is actually 48. Stress has a negative impact on my life, both personal and professional. Now, here's this other statistic. I'm often under stress at work. 30% of people said they are often under stress at work. So the point with all of this is, even before having a pandemic and having an economic crisis, our stress was already pretty intense for many people. So it makes it even more relevant to focus on this today. What I want to share with you specifically is going to include my backstory to kind of help you see what I've been through and why this topic has become really important to me. We're going to look at what are your stressors and how stress affects us. And the feature part of this conversation is to dive in a little bit more to mindfulness tools and positive psychology. We'll dabble with a visualization tool idea for how to handle interviews or presentations at work. Tackling tough career decisions. There's going to be a lot of you that have difficult choices to make if you're unemployed or you're in a difficult work environment. So we're going to give you a tool to help you make hard decisions. And close with a minute on creating a wellness strategy. That is my plan. But let me tell you my backstory. I went to Northeastern for my undergraduate degree in business, and then I went to Salve Regina in Newport for a master's in holistic counseling. That's where I really kind of got introduced to a lot of holistic principles and practices as well as mindfulness. I took those tools and I brought them with me into the Career Center at Northeastern when I worked with students and alumni. I started embedding them right into some of my counseling appointments, my coaching appointments with the students and alums. Then I started presenting these tools at regional conferences. But it was always more geared towards, career counselors or somebody in the job search up until 2016. And I had a very, very pivotal year and very challenging year. This is what happened. Actually, this all happened in a 6-month period. I had multiple health issues. I had 2 trips to the ER, both for life-threatening situations, a 1-month medical leave, 2 car accidents, which had nothing to do with the health issues, but one of them did total my car. All of this was layered with going through a reorg and eventual job loss of a part-time associate director job that I had because they did a reorg and couldn't have the part-time roles anymore. As you can imagine, this is me in a stressful situation for an extended period of time. The reason I share this story with you, this intensity, is because as I came out of that 6 to 7 months, came out the other side, I realized that my mindfulness and my positive psychology were a huge asset to my coping and my getting through that period. I joke around with people and I say, yeah, I ended up with about 40 of my favorite meditations bookmarked on my mindfulness app called Insight Timer. So if you need a specific recommendation ever on Insight Timer, I'm your woman. I had a chance to screen a lot of those while I was going through my health issues. So now I'm really motivated to not just teach job seekers, but to share with people mindfulness and positive psychology, as well as a little tiny bit of neuroscience to help us realize that stress is not just something to push through. It's something to address directly and really put that self-care in the forefront. So let's dive into mindfulness to give us sort of a base understanding. Okay, this is a little silly, but maybe we all know how to empty a wine bottle, but emptying our minds is a little bit challenging. Let's see if we can actually define mindfulness. We'd love to have you add some information into the chat box. And Leslie, we're going to give you a moment. Actually, just even take a moment and take a breath. And then ask yourself, before you start typing, what do I think of when I hear that word? What resonates? What pops up for me when I'm hearing the word mindfulness? As a group, can we define this a little bit together? A moment to think about that, and then we'll add in to the chat box. Yeah, is everybody finding the chat box okay?
It looks like the bubble in a comic strip.
Some
Talk bubble.
folks are, this is Nicole, some folks are chatting to me privately. So I'll
Oh, okay, you can share then, Nicole.
because I'm the host. So we have awareness of your internal state is one respondent. Being in tune with our bodies is another respondent. Um, oh, okay. And some folks are seeing now that they're just sharing with me, so they're starting to share with um, panelists, I believe.
And I just did the same thing because I was on connected to you guys when I went and added in my mindfulness resources website. I'm sorry you guys weren't able to see my website earlier. I shared at the wrong level. Sorry about that.
And I also wrote in some things to all attendees. Did you see mine, Sabrina? Some thoughts about what mindfulness is? Peace.
I see being in tune with our bodies, but I don't see yours.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I said all attendees, but I guess that didn't include you. So now I'll send it. Now I'll send it to you.
Should be. Oh, there's an all participants button. Let's use that one, everyone.
Yeah.
All participants will help us be able to see this instead of just panelists. Bear with us, folks. We're learning as we go. And I've gotten very used to Zoom, and therefore I have to readjust when I'm in a WebEx. Maybe others are the same way. Peace, being in the moment, aware of yourself and your body and feelings. So awareness seems to be a big key word here. Absolutely. These are great. Any others before I move on? Just going to share with you, well, if anybody has any other words, just type them in. The APA, the American Psychological Association, says that mindfulness is maintaining moment-to-moment awareness of one's experience without judgment. And we can say basically that it's way more than just sitting and meditating. And some people will say to me, oh my gosh, I can't sit still for an hour, or what is the point? I don't want to just sit and do nothing. But mindfulness is actually way more than just meditation. So here you see some other forms of mindfulness. So walking, which I just came back from a bike ride. I would say biking is in the list too. Yoga. When I was an undergrad, I did rock climbing. And I think that actually that rock climbing was so good for me because it allowed me to take a break from my academics. I was kind of one of those, I guess, a bit of a driver, pushed myself kind of hard. So my academics were always on my mind as an undergrad. But if I got to a rock wall, all I could pay attention to was the next handhold and the next foothold. So I feel like that was such a good mindfulness exercise for me. Some of you might be out gardening right now. I think that's a way to really lose yourself in that one point of contact, that one moment-to-moment awareness with the dirt and the flowers. So recognize that when I start talking about the benefits of mindfulness, we're talking about the benefits of all of these kinds of different activities. You can even mindfully empty your dishwasher. So it doesn't have to be a Tai Chi or a yoga or a sitting meditation to actually get the benefits of it. But let's talk a little bit more about why should I even bother? There are so many articles about mindfulness, and it's been researched pretty extensively, especially in the last 10 years. So some of the things you'll find is that it strengthens your immune function, increases positive emotions, decreases our stress. And some other research has really helped see that it stretches even beyond those to helping our brains. There's a scan of a hippocampus down there, and it's showing that after, I think it was after an 8-week MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction course, gray matter in the hippocampus increased. The hippocampus is responsible for both memory and learning. And so you're actually, when you're doing mindfulness, you're allowing yourself to have stronger ability to learn new things, and your memory is going to be better. And there's also this strengthening of our focus, our attention, and even more empathy. Now, there's another reference to a Harvard Business Review article that I want to bring up. mindfulness isn't just for our health, it can also help us in the workplace. So this Harvard Business Review article focused on how meditation benefits CEOs. The themes that I pulled from that article, and it's hyperlinked in this PDF. When you get this, you'll be able to go to all the resources that I mentioned just by clicking on this slide when you have a copy of the slides, which I don't normally give out copies of my slides, but I really, really wanted people to be able to come back to this presentation and use these resources to make a huge difference. Anyway, so you see the theme from this article is resilience, creativity, and focus. Those are some of the benefits. Now, I want to shift to looking at your own life. Now that we have a little bit of base understanding of mindfulness, I'd love to find out what's challenging for you right now. What are your stressors? Can you think of what's causing you stress right now, or what's been causing you stress even for months? What is it that rises to the top for you as a stressor? You can add these into the chat box, and I'm going to share mine first and then give you actually a few minutes to think about it before typing. My dad and my stepmom tested positive for COVID-19 a few weeks ago, so it's quite obvious that I have concern for their health. They're doing really well, but it's still very concerning, right? I worry about my clients as I'm working with different people during this time, especially those that are going through career changes, worried about their job loss. I'm going to guess everyone feels this. I hate the sense that so many things are outside my control. I also don't like it when so many things are happening at once. And bad night's sleep is my other stressor. I do have insomnia from time to time, and it's a struggle. When the whole world is having such a challenging circumstance, I think it makes it harder for us to sleep because we worry about what's going on. So let's just give you a moment to think, what is it that's really hard for me right now? What are my stressors? I'm just going to have you think before you type. I'm just going to sit and breathe. And if you already have yours, you can just take this as a mindfulness break for just a moment while others have a chance to think about it. So if you've had a minute, I now invite you to add into the chat box We'll give you one more minute to add into chat, and then Leslie can go ahead and share a couple of those in addition to the too many that I shared with you of mine. Want to go ahead and share, Leslie?
Sure. The ones that I can see include a person who is stressed about living alone and working in a grocery store during the pandemic. And someone else who misses being able to be with friends up close. Someone who's concerned about a mother who is a physician administering COVID-19 tests.
Mm.
Someone worried about family members who are graduating from college, into this economy. Keeping someone else worried about how the pandemic will reshape their own career path. And people spoke about being worried about health and jobs of family members who may be okay for right now, but like still it's a worry.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those.
Nicole,
So
are there any that you see that we don't?
No, I don't see any additional comments in the chat, but participants should know if they just want to address just the panelists. That's possible if they want their responses to be more anonymous.
So when we hear other people's stressors and they happen to be ours, we don't feel quite as alone with that pain, with that suffering, with that difficulty. And the other thing with naming it, I think it helps us to say, okay, how can I address this more directly? Maybe I don't have control and I can't change it, but can I honor this is difficult? Can I voice it? Can I voice it to a friend or a family member that can alleviate that stressor? And I think too often we're like, oh, we're just supposed to stuff those feelings under the rug. And I don't think that's the best way. I think we vent it, process it, and then we say, okay, if I can't control this, what can I control? I can't control someone hiring me, but what can I control in the job search? Or I got to go to my job. What can I control to keep myself the most safe? So by shifting our attention to those things that we can most control, we often feel a little bit better. Now, when we look at this next slide, you're going to see, this is from the American Institute of Stress, that this is top causes of stress in the US. This is before the pandemic. Look at what they are: job, pressure, money, and health. And all three of those are being affected right now. So this is really like a triple whammy for so many people because they're being hit at multiple angles. All the more reason to pay really close attention to what we can do to alleviate this intensity for us. We can't change the world, we can't change these situations, but in our own small spaces, we can take some actions. Okay. Before we talk more about solutions or ideas, I want to dive into how does stress actually affect us. This slide, when I came across it, said, yes, that is my mind right now. So many different things kind of take over my mind at once or from time to time, moving because there's so much happening at the same time right now. So I think people can probably relate to that. But let's just ask the question, how does stress affect you? It could be something that happens in your body. It could be something that happens with your mind and your thinking or your emotions or even your behaviors. So take a moment and then pop into the chat box any feedback about any ways that stress affects you or that you see stress playing out in the lives of your loved ones. So sometimes it can be the stress doesn't affect you this way, but your partner gets really upset about and she or he happens to get headaches or gets really irritable. So you can also think about how you've watched stress play out in your loved ones or your friends and family. Give you a moment for that, and then let's share. All right. You want to share those out?
Sure. Seeing things like some people feel tension in back and shoulders. Some
Yeah.
people said more generally muscle tension. One person said, my 7-year-old son has started to bite his nails.
Mm.
Someone said, I get really sick. My back and neck get knotted up from stress. Someone said irritability, difficulty staying asleep.
Mm.
Someone else said more of a mental thing, kind of worrying a thought or a worry that's like hard to quiet down and keeps cycling around.
Ruminating. Yeah. So this next slide, thank you for that participation. This next slide's a little pixelized, but it's the best one because it really encompasses so many of the things you just mentioned. Like someone talked about tight muscles, more than one person, and I totally relate to that because I get it right up here. So you can have headaches or frequent infection because your immune system is diminished when you're under chronic stress. When it comes to your mind, what's actually happening, and we're going to get into this in just a moment, you actually have you see fewer options. You have more narrow thinking. You have kind of impaired judgment. Maybe you're more negative, or that worrying is kind of taking over. When it comes to behaviors, you could be drinking more. You could be more accident prone. Here's where restlessness and insomnia come in too. And then with emotions, what I'm finding for me personally is my fuse is shorter. So, I'm a mindfulness advocate, right? So I'm very into this stuff. And yet I can have moments where I'm like, boom, quick to be really irritable. And I'm like, oh, this is not even who I am, but this is part of what's happening with the chronic stress and uncertainty. So you could be more irritable, fussy. You can also have a loss of confidence. And this affects those of us that are in the job search. That's one of the things that's really challenging. So there's a ton of things that are going on when we're under that consistent stress. The last piece of understanding how this affects us to hopefully motivate us to really work with it directly is the stress response. So when you activate that fight or flight, you consistently are activating that. Here's what's happening when that cortisol and that adrenaline are shooting out into our body. It is increasing our breathing rate. It's increasing our heart rate. The other weird thing is because the blood is going to your extremities, so you can do that fight or flight or freeze thing, your blood is not going to your intestines. It's not processing your food properly. And I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't have this knowledge. And when I was really sick and really stressed out in 2016, I had issues with digestion. Now I understand. I didn't have anything wrong with me. It was the stress that was actually doing that, inhibiting my ability to digest properly. So it's like the more I learn about the effects, I'm realizing how important it is to address it. Let's do this last bit of the nervous system in the brain. The prefrontal cortex is actually where this decision making and your judgment and your problem solving are going on. And chronic stress can actually cause it to shrink. So you don't have as much of ability to actually get through your day, right? You're compromising yourself. You're compromising your capability to problem solve when you don't address your stress. Now, amygdala, that is where that fight or flight is activated. And so this amygdala is activated during chronic stress because it's trying to get you ready for fight or flight. And we don't want to keep that activated. We want it to come back down. The last brain part is the hippocampus. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. This is where you have, where you learn new things and where memory takes place. With chronic stress that's untreated or unmitigated, it leads to fewer new brain cells being generated in this region. This means that it's going to be harder for you to perform well in an interview because you're trying to memorize things or remember things when being asked questions. It's going to mean that in general, learning a new task, if you're starting a new job, is going to be a little bit harder if you have had this chronic stress. And over time, it can even lead to depression. So there's just so many reasons for us to want to address this stress. And the slide kind of reiterates it. It says, prefrontal cortex and hippocampus are weakened during chronic stress, and the amygdala is strengthened. All right. Wow, that's kind of heavy, right? But now, if you want a little bit more about this, we're not going to run this video today, but I wanted you to have it. And actually, I sent it to Nicole and Leslie so that they could pop it into the chat. If you go back, the two of you go back to the very beginning of the chat box, you'll see the link to this video, and then you can cut and paste it in. So in case people want to watch this, maybe right after this webinar is done, it's only like 4.5 minutes long. So I just wanted you to know that that's available to you. It really helps explain this neuroscience bit in an easy to understand format. But what I want to do now is have us think about, what do you already know about how to reduce your stress? Let's have you just do a reflection for a minute, even before you start the chat box. Maybe write down or just think through 3 to 5 ideas. What have you done in the past when you've been under a lot of stress that's worked? What have you seen other people do, either to prevent the stress or to deal with the stress once it's there? I'm going to be quiet and give you a few minutes to think about that. And when you're ready, you can add into the chat box. All right, do we have a couple in there, Leslie, that we can share out?
I see a couple. Someone said dancing.
Yay.
Someone said talking to a friend. Someone said chanting.
Oh, cool.
Like, I've done that before. You can do it along with a YouTube or an online source, or you can do it by yourself if you already know a chant. Just the repetitive. Listening to music. Nicole, do you have any that have come into you?
Sorry, I'm looking. I think the ones that you just listed, one more, walking, came up.
One of my favorites.
And here's one, deep breathing while repeating a meditative phrase in my head.
Ah.
Kind of like chanting silently in a way.
Let me give, if anybody likes that idea of a word, like a mantra that they can repeat, my yoga instructor, one of my yoga instructors gave me this one. On the inhale, in your mind, say the word just, and on the exhale, say the word this. So it's just this. Just this. Sometimes my mind is super busy, and just breathing with the anchor of like where I'm noticing the breath is not enough. It won't cut through. So I find the just this, or inhale, exhale, is another phrase I use. So that might be helpful. So I'm so glad someone said that one. So let me just kind of say that acknowledging that our lives are under heightened stress right now is that first step. And then the second step is, what can I actively add into my life or take out of my life to get this stress down a few notches and build my resilience to get through these tougher times and empower my nervous system and brain to be at its most productive and most effective? That's what this is about. I think self-care sometimes sounds like, what's the word for it I've been looking for? Like almost pretentious or almost like indulgent. Oh, I'm, going to the spa for some self-care. No, the self-care I'm talking about is allowing our nervous system and brain to be at peak performance so that you're calm, clear, and collected to make decisions and perform, and that you are, taking care of yourself to be in that best mental state as well. So here are my 10 tips, but we've already mentioned several of them. And so many of these are just a reminder to you. We've already talked about meditation, and I'll just say again, Insight Timer is my favorite, but I've recently heard that a tool called Headspace is offering free subscriptions to anyone who's unemployed for a year. So you can look up Headspace and find out more about that if you're not employed right now. We mentioned earlier, even just a few deep breaths in between things is a really great way to do a quick mindfulness break. The power in venting or sharing with a friend, what I've personally found and what I've read is that vulnerability also makes your bond closer with that person. We're not talking about venting to them every single time you see them and going on and on and on and abusing a friendship. But we're talking about having that authentic moment where you say, this is really tough and I'm struggling. Just having someone hear you is really helpful. So strengthening that bond. Oh, we had this come up. Being outside and going for a walk is, I think it's just really powerful. It's really needed, especially right now when we're so limited on where we can go. Well, when I go out, my wellness strategy includes getting movement twice a day. And it's usually one walk, or it's two walks, or it's one walk and a yoga, I should say, one walk and a cardio, whatever it is, I try and do two. But sometimes my walk is a walking meditation. And for me, there's a couple different ways to do walking meditation. One is I can literally notice my foot, pretend this is my foot for a minute, hitting the pavement or hitting the path and feeling the sensation, heel, ball, toes as you walk. It allows your brain to have something to focus on because our brains are really wild, especially right now. Another form of walking meditation that I really love to do, especially in the spring, is paying attention to one of your senses. What do you smell? Can you smell something in the air? When you're close to a lilac tree, for example, you can definitely smell those. Another thing is, what do I hear? Can I hear the sounds of the traffic? Can I hear the sounds of a child playing? Can I hear the birds? Again, bringing yourself into that moment-to-moment awareness. And what do I see? I love to go out and see how many different colors I can see right now. It can even be what are the different shades of green or the different shades of brown that you can notice in the bark of a tree. This doesn't have to be hard, and you could do it for even a few minutes or a few moments to get that benefit of mindfulness. Visualization is a tool that I use with my clients. When I'm working with my individuals who are going through career transitions, it's usually pretty stressful. And when clients have an interview coming up or an important presentation, I encourage them to take a few breaths. This is like the night before. And then imagine in your mind's eye being in the interview. Imagine a smile on the interviewer's face. Imagine them nodding. Imagine yourself saying really clearly that intro about tell me about yourself. Maybe even run through imagining what you're going to say. Imagine your body feeling calm. Imagine yourself feeling confident. Now, this may sound very like frivolous and, oh yeah, like for sure that's going to help. but it actually is grounded. And there are people even in the Olympics that are using visualization techniques to help them right before something as important as a ski jump. This video is connected from the New York Times. If when you get the PDF of this PowerPoint, you want to check it out. It's only 4 or 5 minutes. It's really fun to, worth watching and fun to see. This one, everybody pretty much knows. If we can get those endorphins released, cranking up that cardio can really give us a nice feeling afterwards, especially. With all of us working from home, I think this is an extra important one right now, or if you're in the job search, to not sit down for 90 minutes straight and work. Have a little ping go off on your phone if you need a reminder so that you can get up and get a fresh snack or get a glass of water or walk outside, look, and come back in. Even if you don't have time for that walk, or stretch. You know, we can do chair yoga, even like you can do some twisting right in your own chair so that you don't have that body get so stiff on you. This next one's kind of fun. Grab my extra sheet here that tells me a little bit more about it. I came across this study from the University of Kansas, and they grabbed 169 undergraduate students for they told them it was studying multitasking. They gave them something really stressful to do. Half the group had a chopstick, pretend this is a chopstick in my mouth, in their mouth. Now, when you put a chopstick in your mouth, what's actually happening is you're mimicking a smile. At the end of this study, the students that had the chopstick in their mouth, mimicking that smile, had lower heart rates than those that did not. During this multitasking stress test, lower heart rate is an indicator of lower stress. So what this says to me, and you've heard before how important humor is, how important it is to laugh. We don't have enough of those experiences, especially right now. So what can you do? Can you go onto YouTube and find a stand-up comedian? That's part of what I've been doing at night, is listening to stand-up comedians. Can you watch a funny movie? Can you read a funny book? Can you go look up some jokes and play them on each other? So whatever we can do to actually bring that humor in and that laughter, it's actually going to reduce our stress. This one already got mentioned, but activating our senses, whether it's listening to music, playing music, or noticing what can alleviate you by smelling. Now, I also love like the smell of onions cooking and garlic, like that is like makes me So whatever sense, or even lighting some incense you can think of, might help you also bring it down a notch. The last one, which is more tied towards positive psychology, is the power of gratitude. You might decide at the end of the day to think about what you're grateful for, even if it's something small, even if it's that reminder that you're grateful if you have a roof over your head, grateful that you have family members, grateful that you have the capability to get another job if you don't have a job right now. Now, I have a fun way to do this, and I call it MMs. I'll text MMs to friends and share one sometimes at the end of the weekend. And MM stands for meaningful moments. And this idea about hardwiring happiness comes from a neuropsychologist named Rick Hanson. And if Leslie or Nicole can type this in, Rick Hanson, Hanson, TEDx, off his book, Hardwiring Happiness, I recommend, so you can better understand how important it is to take in the good, because our negative experiences are hardwired faster than our positives. So even these small moments, me hanging out with my friends' kids, or making soup, going on a road trip, smelling the flowers as I walk through the park, are ways that we can strengthen our brain, build our resilience by taking in the good. So maybe the MMs, if you like chocolate and like M&Ms, might be a fun one for you. I think it's really great to use with kids too, because the phrase M&Ms is cute. So what I want you to think about is what tip might work for you in as you go forward. We're not going to put it in the chat box. We're just kind of wanting you to make that note. So by starting with awareness and taking action, I think that we can mitigate some of this stress. And what I want to do for the next couple of minutes before we take any questions and just see where we're at is talk to you about a decision-making tool that I designed specifically to get some insights when you have a tough decision and a pro-con list isn't doing the trick. Sometimes it's not enough. So this dartboard or bullseye exercise is used to clarify what's most important to you. So it's actually kind of a values-based assessment. Again, it's coming back to what's most important to you. So this was a real student that I worked with maybe 10, 12 years ago when I first designed this tool. And she was torn about whether or not to say yes to a job that she was that she'd had come in, a job offer. And particularly, Lily had landed a job with Teach for America in Chicago. Some of the positives that you'll see from Teach for America range from it's this 2-year competitive program. You don't have to be an education major. You get placed across the US, you get some training, and you have a strong alumni network. Here's what I did with Lily. And this tool could be used if you're trying to decide, do I want to go get a grad degree? Do I want to downsize my house and move somewhere else? Do I want to take this offer that's not in my career path, but it would be something, when you have these tough decisions to make, you might be able to use this tool. So coming back to Lily, I drew 3 concentric circles on a dartboard. And I said, Lily, I want you to brainstorm all the positives you can come up with. And I mean, we just really went through everything she could come up with. And then we started placing them on these concentric circles with the most valuable or important positive going at the center. And then something that's a medium of importance to Lily went on the second level. And the kind of frivolous stuff went on the outside. This is a small demonstration of those. She had way more than this, but for practicality for this session, I just put down a few. What you'll see is that the organization's values really matched Lily's values, and so that was a very important one. It ended up being at the center of the circle. An excitement to go to Chicago because she loved to travel was also in the core. And then you can see work with kids and reputation was still good and important, but not as much. And the training was sort of like, whatever. So you could now do the same thing with the negatives. What are the negatives of saying yes to this job? Or what are the concerns with saying yes to this job? Will I have enough support? Well, now I'm going to have to move. It means I can't, pursue anything else. And then place those on the same, place them on a fresh set of circles. And then the deal here is you get to compare that core to the core negatives. This helped her flush out that offer and actually say yes with comfort. So I'm hoping that Eve and you can use this even on your own and add as many criteria to the circles as you can, and then come back to it the next day because you might have some fresh ones. And this way you're really flushing out all the nuances of that offer, and they're all placed on that grid somewhere so that you have a weighted value system in which you can look at and then hopefully have a lot more clarity. All right, I'm going to close with one more piece, and I think we'll even have time for a quick video. And then we'll see if there's are there any questions I need to answer, Leslie, before I go into this last couple things?
I don't see any in the chat.
Okay, great. So when I sit down and I do coaching with my clients, especially, like I said, many of them are going through career transitions, and it's stressful enough to go through a job search, but to go through, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, even though they're 50 years old, you know how that is. It's even more stressful. So I actually work with my clients to develop what I call a wellness strategy. And this is allowing them to be proactive with their well-being while they're going through career change and job search, because we know that's elevated stress anyway. The idea here is if we address that stress, we can present better, not only present better in our job search and our networking and our interviews, but also maintain our motivation. that's a big part. We lose motivation because job searches can be so hard. In these wellness, having this wellness strategy kind of keep us up, keep our head above the water. I look at 4 categories: movement and exercise, social emotional, nutrition, and sleep. You've heard these time and time again. If you ever read anything about well-being and about, being at your best, these are super common. So what we're asking you to think about is, could you design your own wellness strategy addressing these particular areas? So you heard mine saying, movement and exercise. Twice a day, I have to have some kind of movement. For me, social emotional right now is staying in touch with my friends. I'm on the phone more. Nutrition, I eat a salad about 5 days a week. That's part of my wellness strategy. Salad at lunch. Sleep, try and have some good sleep hygiene where I get off my phone by 10 and read before bed and try and do things that are calming and have dark out shades so nothing wakes me up light wise. So if you think about it, you might be able to design your own strategy. These are really, like I said, a lot of them are straightforward. Here's some examples from some of my prior clients that designed wellness strategies. And then tell a friend, maybe that'll help you to actually then go for it because you have that little bit of accountability. All right, I do have time for this. I want to share with you Shawn Achor. We're going to just do a piece of this 12-minute TED Talk on the happy secret to better work. I'm going to escape out of here for a second, and I'm going to go into my screen feels like freezing at the moment. Of course it does. I'm going to do the stop sharing for a moment because I got to share this document. Just in there with me. This is your opportunity to take a few more breaths. You could even do those 3 deep breaths.
And actually, if you don't mind, Sabrina, I was also thinking about making a comment, which is that one thing I've experienced both with personal friends and with clients is that sometimes people who already have some mindfulness practices, my one friend who was exercising every day and doing yoga multiple times a week, then she hit some challenges kind of similar to your 6 months of, and she found that she was having huge anxiety, panic, and the old practices weren't enough. So that's just a little note that sometimes it isn't huge, big things happening in your life. Just if there's some shift, your old practices may not be quite enough, or either you add new ones. And in her case, she was able to meditate for the first time in her life, which she'd never done before. She did other things. And you may add new practices or substitute or switch it up, but don't add to your stress by saying, oh no, what's wrong with me? My practices aren't working. Sometimes it just needs.
I'm so glad you said that, because my ability to do, from time to time I do short sitting meditations that are 10 minutes, and gosh, there are days that I feel like it's worse because my head's really spinning, and I find that I recently bought a home, and I found that painting is actually really mindful and relaxing to me because it's giving me enough of a brain focus that I don't just spin out in a sitting meditation. So let's check out Shawn Achor. We're hopeful that this is going to be okay, but we never know with streaming stuff. So here we go. We'll give it a shot. It's just the last 2 minutes of his presentation. Oh.
Your sales target, we're going to change your sales target. And if happiness is on the opposite side of success, your brain never gets there. What we've done is we've pushed happiness over the cognitive horizon as a society. And that's because we think we have to be successful, then we'll be happier. But the real problem is our brains work in the opposite order. If you can raise somebody's level of positivity in the present, then their brain experiences what we now call a happiness advantage, which is your brain at positive performs significantly better than it does at negative neutral stress. Your intelligence rises, your creativity rises, your energy levels rise. In fact, what we found is that every single business outcome improves. Your brain at positive is 31% more productive than your brain at negative neutral or stress. You're 37% better at sales. Doctors are 19% faster, more accurate at coming up with the correct diagnosis when positive instead of negative, neutral, or stress, which means we can reverse the formula. If we can find a way of becoming positive in the present, then our brains work even more successfully, as we're able to work harder, faster, and more intelligently. What we need to be able to do is reverse this formula so we can start to see what our brains are actually capable of. Because dopamine, which floods into your system when you're positive, has two functions. Not only does it make you happier, it turns on all the learning centers in your brain, allowing you to adapt to the world in a different way. We found that there are ways you can train your brain to be able to become more positive. In just a 2-minute span of time, done for 21 days in a row, we can actually rewire your brain, allowing your brain to actually work more optimistically and more successfully. We've done these things in research now in every single company that I've worked with, getting them to write down 3 new things that they're grateful for 21 days in a row, 3 new things each day. And at the end of that, their brain starts to retain a pattern of scanning the world not for the negative, but for the positive first. Journaling about one positive experience you've had over the past 24 hours allows your brain to relive it. Exercise teaches your brain your behavior matters. We find that meditation allows your brain to get over the cultural ADHD that we've been creating by trying to do multiple tasks at once. It allows our brains to focus on the task at hand. And finally, random acts of kindness or conscious acts of kindness. We get people when they open up their inbox to write one positive email praising or thanking somebody in their social support network. And by doing these activities and by training your brain, just like we train our bodies, what we found is we can reverse the formula for happiness and success, and in doing so, not only create ripples of positivity, but create a real revolution. Thank you very much.
All right. It looks like that worked.
Yep, I could hear him.
Great. Let me go back now to, I have to switch over for sharing from Chrome back into the PowerPoint just for 1 or 2 more slides. And I know, hopefully it makes you want to watch the whole thing. It's such a good session. He speaks really fast too, so I need to like watch it a couple times to really get it. But what I'll reiterate is that final slide. This is so similar, and I found this video only about 3 weeks ago, and it's so similar to the things that we came up with as a group and that I talked about in my 10 tips for resilience. So here we have again, gratitude, journaling, exercise, meditation, and random acts of kindness. This is a great one for us to kind of have as a wrap up. But here's an invitation to you. Sounds funny, I'm telling you to get out your phone, but if you grab your phone and you look at your day tomorrow, I have an invitation to you to ask yourself, is there something I can do to make tomorrow 5% better? See, that's a small incremental gain. And if we can recognize that those small gains add up over time. And the other thing about setting goals is if we make a lofty goal, oh, I'm going to exercise for an hour and I'm going to meditate for 2 and I'm going to, no. We tend to fail when we set ourselves up for way too high of expectations. So if we can take and do a small goal, I'm going to do a 15-minute cardio session from Sabrina's handout on page 4. Then that 15-minute cardio twice a week, you get that habit established, and it might then take seed because you started small. So as we wrap up here, if anyone wants to add into the chat box one small thing you might do because of this session, or one idea that really resonated with you or that you liked the reminder of, but I'd love to hear a takeaway from you or a piece that might make your day tomorrow 5% better, if you're willing to do that in the chat. And I'll just share that, again, I've got mindfulness resources on my website. And this slide is one of my favorites. Do we want our mind really full? Or do we want to be mindful? So again, we'll take just a few minutes to add into the chat box something you might take away from today. By sharing what you take away, you also reinforce it. You're more likely to retain it if you actually write about it. Give you a second on that. I also give you an invitation to connect with me on LinkedIn, and know that we are going to be doing, I will get a chance to join you for another session, and it will be on the topic of LinkedIn. And I can get Leslie to remind us, or Nicole to remind us of that date. I did not write it down, and I don't want to open my email right now. So you guys can remind me of that. It's somewhere in the middle of June.
June 10th for the LinkedIn webinar with our own Sabrina Woods.
Go. And we'll just see if anybody felt like adding in a final thought into the chat box. And if Leslie wants to share, that's great.
I see one that says someone wants to send one of those appreciating emails to my aunt.
I love that. One little tiny, couple of minute message that you send to someone can brighten their day and at the same time brighten yours. That's really good.
Another person wrote decision-making strategy and in parentheses dartboard.
Great. I like that tool can be used and help you really flush out and see what's most important to you. Yeah. All right. If anything comes up from anyone, you're welcome to reach me at sabrina-woods.com if I can be of help, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and we'll look forward to joining with you again on June 10th. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions and comments.